Report, I'm Christina Loren. President Donald Trump didn't spend a lot of time on agriculture in his State of the Union address, but he did defend his trade policy. RFD-TV's Sarah Mock joins us live from our D.C. studios to discuss what the president's words mean for the future. Thanks for joining us, Sarah.
Thanks, Christina. Well, all morning we've been watching reactions flow in from folks across Washington and across the country to that State of the Union speech we heard last night. Overall, folks, it was really well received. Folks really appreciated what they heard. There was actually one farmer in attendance in that room last night, guest of Congresswoman from Illinois, Sherry Bustos. That farmer, Tom Mueller, was there specifically interested to hear about two big topics when I talked to him last night. He wanted to hear about infrastructure, about America's locks and dams, about rural hospitals and schools, and so many pieces that we've heard so much talked about, so much bipartisan energy, and yet we have not moved forward on that. We heard the president touch on that last night, but we didn't hear a lot of details come out about that. But one thing that we did, kind of that other topic that Tom wanted to hear about, was about trade, and we did hear President Trump express some optimism on, the biggest piece of that, which is of course that potential China trade deal.
We recently imposed tariffs on $250 billion of Chinese goods, and now our Treasury is receiving billions and billions of dollars. But I don't blame China for taking advantage of us. I blame our leaders and representatives for allowing this travesty to happen. I have great respect for President Xi, and we are now working on a new trade deal with China. But it must include real structural change to end unfair trade practices, reduce our chronic trade deficit, and protect American jobs.
Now, there was no specific mention of ag or the impact of trade wars on farmers there, but if you saw just at the end of that clip while folks were clapping, the White House cameras panned over to some cabinet secretaries, including Secretary Perdue. We think that's probably an important way to kind of bring in the ag element into that conversation. We did hear President Trump announce last night that he will be taking a meeting in Vietnam, heading to Vietnam later this month to have a meeting with the president of North Korea. Experts think that he may be using that as an opportunity, if the deal is done or close, to meet with President Xi as well and get that inked before his self-imposed March 1st deadline, after which, if a deal is not reached with China, tariffs will go up again and likely lead to more retaliatory tariffs. And of course, there was also a Democratic reaction. We heard the Democrats focus on a couple of things that the president left out. They focused on the fact that farmers have been impacted by trade. They called for an end to the trade war. They talked about agriculture's dependence on, just briefly talked about the need in agriculture for a strong legal immigration policy, saying agriculture is kind of dependent on having that strong legal labor force, needing a solution on that. And of course, they also talked about need to have resources for health, especially for rural hospitals, and the need to kind of expand that and make sure rural communities are healthy. So lots of folks talking about their priorities for 2019 last night, kind of laying out big ideas and goals, directions that they want to go in, but we didn't really hear very much in terms of detail, so we'll be waiting to see how that shakes out ahead of a deadline next week that could lead to another government shutdown. So lots of things to keep an eye on. We'll be doing that here in Washington. Christina?
Thank you, Sarah. We're glad it's you keeping track of everything for us. We will hear more from our D.C. studio later this morning at 1 p.m. Eastern, and that will be 12 noon. Okay, Central Time. The industry is reacting to the president.